Do you want to make any of us co-hosts?
What, Lenny?
Athena, do you want to make any of us co-host?
Sure, I'll be hanging out with you, but I can make you a co-host.
And
Alright.
Frecka's still in Germany?
Yes, I didn't hear from him, so I think he's being good and off email.
Good
And
for him.
yeah, we'll let that go.
We're all set. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Athena. Okay, so I'm going to call this meeting of GOL to order. Happy New Year, everybody. It is Thursday, January 9th at 6:31 p.m. I'm going to check to make sure everybody can hear and be heard, starting with Pat DeAngelis.
Present?
Thank you. Lynn Griesmer,
Present.
George Ryan,
Present.
and Athena, thank you so much for joining us. And I am also present. We are missing Counselor Ette tonight, and that is absolutely okay. He should take his time off. So we are going to start. Our agenda starts off with public comment. We do not have any members of the public with us right now. And so with that, let me pull up the things that I meant to pull up before the meeting. So the reason why we're meeting today is to touch base one last time about the goals, and we've taken some time away from it. Hopefully everyone has taken some time away from it, to revisit these and kind of go through in anticipation of the conversation with the council to try and get this, as honed, I'm going to say, as it can be, so that when we present it to the council, we're able to have a constructive conversation. That doesn't necessarily mean that these goals are going to be, well, this is my thoughts on this process. Y'all can go in whatever direction you want, which you will do no matter what I say anyway. But I think that what would behoove us is to go about this process, not trying to just say what goals we want in there, because when we get to the council, if someone wants a goal in there, they're just going to move to add it. So we should at least try to look at the goals that are in there to make sure that they are meeting what we believe is a helpful kind of format, right? So meaning they're actionable. We can look back in a year and know exactly what was supposed to be accomplished, or if they are broad, know that any movement on them counts as a checkbox, to make sure that I'm trying not to lapse into my whole like work speech about SMART goals, but basically that's what we're going for here, right? We want them to be specific, enough so that everybody knows what they're talking about. They need to be attainable, or part of them needs to be called out as attainable within the year. And we need to know what completion of that goal looks like. So I wanted to look at the goals from that lens, and have this discussion as a group. And then I also wanted to spend some time putting together an idea. I talked to Lynn about this earlier today, to talk about what GOL thinks might be the best use of the council's time at a retreat focused on the goals. So the goals, the way that we're doing them this year, really are it's different, right? They're a lot less kind of vague than they've been in years past. The formatting's different, yes, but even the way that we're specifying the action items is a bit more granular than we've been intentionally, because we've really struggled looking back at the goals to say, have we done it? Have we not? So when we get to discussing them as a council, it can be really hard to have that discussion in the middle of a normal council meeting when we have a ton of other business and there's all these items that we really need to up, down, or adapt, right? So GOL talked, just this is a refresher. GOL had talked about doing this as a retreat and really having the goals be the focus of a retreat day, because the goals are also the council priorities in many ways, right? They tie. So I wanted to, with this committee, kind of think about what might a retreat focusing on these goals look like, so that we can bring something forward that isn't that's been brought forward by at least 4 counselors, right? As a plan or a proposed plan, and then the council president can do with that what they wish. How does that sound good? I mean, that's the agenda, so those are the directions we will go. But does that sound like an okay plan in terms of how I'm conceptualizing that? And are there any questions, Pat?
Yeah, no,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that sounds like a decent plan. I went through today and these are minor, but it feels like within specific goals, some things are scattered throughout that are connected, and we might want to, it would be very simple, cut, paste, put them in some kind of order. That's minor, and I just want to
Okay.
add that.
No, that's super helpful. Thank you. Any other questions on kind of the plan of attack for today? Okay, and we might not, I'm not even gonna say we might not need to go the whole time. I'm just gonna say we are where we are. All right. I'm going to pull up, hang on one second, sorry. The number of documents that start with 2025 draft town manager goals. I just want to make sure I get the right one. All right. Can someone else ask a question while I'm pulling this up? No,
I was
no
gonna
other
say, if
When's
we
your
take-
birthday?
If we take long enough, it could become the 2026 town manager goal.
Gosh. Golly gee willikers. Oh my God, how do I download this thing?
But that's
All
not
right.
supposed to.
I mean, comments are also fine. Sorry. I'm still trying.
So you imagine, we will take up the second topic at the end of our review of this document, namely how to approach a retreat. That will be.
That was
Right,
that was
makes
my
sense.
thought.
Right.
If that's okay with you.
Fine.
All right. Okay. So, I also am going to try to pull up. Lynn, did you say that Kathy sent her comments to you as well? Would you mind pulling those up? And I can pull up the main document, and I might have us switch those tasks in a minute, but we're
Will
going to see
do.
if my internet cooperates with me today. I'm not screen sharing yet. I know. Pat, I can't. You're muted, but
So
you
we,
telling me I wasn't
so we
screen sharing?
haven't seen Kathy's goals, or are they already integrated?
They are not already integrated. I got them pretty recently.
And it is out, as I recall, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah.
As I recall, I think she commented on the old goals.
Okay.
So I'm pulling all of that up right now. Yep.
Pat, you're, oh,
Yeah, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. So is this her document with her integrated or not?
no, this is
All right.
just the document that was in the packet.
Okay, I missed this one. I was working with a different one, so I didn't see the battery energy. Oh, no, that comment. I didn't see that comment.
This part?
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
it's fine comment. I just didn't
Okay.
see it. So I don't know if I've looked at the same one.
Okay. Well, as we go
Sorry.
through, no, that's okay. Let's go through, and kind of revisit here with this lens of, is there anything that we anticipate the council wanting to add? I know that there are going to be things in here that we discuss. Ultimately, I think that's where the conversation about the retreat comes in. But just making sure we've kind of covered what we need to cover.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
Anna,
Lynn.
you let me know when you want me to share anything from Kathy.
Was there anything on Kathy regarding climate action? Let's just go section by section.
It's going to be difficult. On the one that says take action related to climate action adaptation and resilience plan, is that still in ours?
We have that as the objective.
Okay, she said potential change to take actions listed in the CARP plan by applying for grants to support energy efficiency in apartment complexes and install solar arrays on public buildings, building roofs, and school parking lots.
Okay, thoughts on how or if to,
Well,
int-
aren't those in the CARP plan?
I don't think that level of specificity about school buildings and parking lots is, particularly that end part. I do think that we had the conversation a couple times about the applying for funds as being sort of a given, both within the CARP, but also within the like fiscal responsibility. So
Yeah.
I think that part is kind of covered. I think it's that last bit.
Could you,
Yeah, and it's pretty specific.
could you reread that last bit, Lynn? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. By applying for grants to support energy efficient, I think she means efficiency, in apartment complexes and install solar arrays on public building roofs and school parking lots.
I think my questions for that are kind of the every school, every parking, like I've my questions are kind of what does that actually look like within a year? Um, the way that that's written feels to me like we expect them on every single parking lot and every single school, and I don't know that that's feasible. But if it's that area of wishing that area to be the priority is solar,
Can I,
maybe.
I think that didn't we kind of suggest that the whole issue of applying for grants should be throughout the whole thing and therefore
Yeah.
should be mentioned above?
That would make better sense.
My
And-
thought, yeah.
And
Sorry.
so therefore,
Wasn't it in the financial guideline? I can't remember. It's been like a month.
well,
Was
yeah,
that in
it might
wasn't
be
it
in
in
the
the financial
financial.
guidelines? That's what I thought, but
Well, it might be in the financial goals too.
It could be inserted under number one of policy goals, if
Hmm.
you would, but.
Oh, no.
Oh,
And
yeah.
sometimes it's
And-
just given. That's what we do. Most of these kinds of projects are by applying for grants. We're kind of saying something that's already, right. I mean, we can put it in if we want.
Okay.
Maybe wherever possible.
Again, I thought that we were going to do that kind of a broad thing because it applies to
it applies
roads.
for everything.
Yeah.
Let me take this out and okay, hang on.
Could there be something,
It's down in the boxes, not up here, unless we want to try to put something in here.
it seems to me that if you went back to the beginning, um,
What? Sorry.
that's right.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
This is good, Anna, I think.
yeah, I think it should be there.
Does
you
this
know,
work?
across the board, or. And then I mean, because she's asking for specific funding for energy efficiency in complexes.
Right, so now let's go to here
Yeah.
and see if in the listing of any of this,
So the work towards multifamily, like it used to be called deep energy retrofits. They've shifted a little bit in their goals, but this is something that is in the CARP. So
Right.
I think the question that GOL's been wrestling with, that we've been wrestling with, is can we have a broad objective and know that that means the town manager may pursue things that aren't necessarily itemized as a goal because we haven't been able to itemize it specifically, but he still has the latitude to do it, knowing that we can't necessarily not demand, but we can't necessarily say it's a priority out there if it's not listed in an action item. And my kind of other side of that is, can we say it's a priority if we can't even identify what it is? Which feels challenging, right? So for me, I think that what Kathy's talking about is covered under the CARP
Yeah.
work in the objective, and the town manager could pursue it. We are just not putting it as a priority. Sorry, we are not putting it as a priority.
I'm at the disadvantage of having all these different documents up, but
Yeah.
I think that we should go with what we just did
Mhm.
and in a retreat, see if Kathy is satisfied with that.
Okay. And I think what we also can do is when in that retreat, when we explain the objectives, kind of say what I just said in
Yeah,
better phrasing of like the objective is giving permission to pursue anything relating to the CARP. It's just we expect these three at a minimum action items. More is great, but these three are what we are expecting to be done in the year.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It's also a
Yes.
good example of a specificity where I think many of us feel totally unqualified to judge one way or the other. I mean, these are all great ideas, but why should they be prioritized over a whole host of other great ideas, which I certainly don't have in my mind at the moment. And so again, that's the concern I would have with that kind of specificity here, is we leave this up to staff. And unless there's some very specific and solid case for why it should be, you know, this particular site and this particular project, I think we
Right.
just leave it up.
I
I
think so
think
too.
George, and George, I think honestly that the kind of messy answer there is that as the elected body, we do put our priorities forward. And if the majority of 13 people says it's a priority, whether or not that's wise, that's kind of how this process works, right? Is like if most of us say we really want to do something, whether or not statistically it should be the thing that's done, it happens. And so that's kind of how these goals work in some senses too. Luckily for us, we have town staff who can help us to prioritize, or committees. And in this case, a committee helped us to bring some of these forward. And so, for example, this middle one, Seek Climate Leader Community Designation, was brought forward upon the recommendation of staff. So there are things, it kind of is a hodgepodge of those three of like, counselors would like to do this and can convince at least 6 other people that they want to do this. Staff pitch it as this would be smart to do, or a committee pitches it and a counselor decides to bring it forward from there. Well, all of these counselor have brought forward. Lynn?
Yes. I'm gonna just take a pause. I'm gonna go get a second computer where I can pull up her
Okay.
stuff so I can be looking at everything together.
Wow,
Okay,
thank you.
sounds good. While Lynn is pausing, this right-hand column we put in before in terms of just kind of right now, this is serving as a reference to the council more than anything else. I think when Paul does his self-evaluation, this will be where he marks whether this is in progress, complete, etc. But for us, this is really more of a helpful tool in terms of is this something we put in for the first time, or is this a carryover from prior years? We have not finished filling it in. I'd like for us to do that today. Any questions on this first climate action? Then we'll move on. Okay. Oh, do you have a question, Pat, or comment?
We have criteria and priorities and transitioning vehicles, et cetera. It would be enormously expensive. Should there be any reference to budget finances, or is that would be part of the criteria?
I think that was part of the criteria.
Okay.
My understanding here was in the past year's goals, we used to have start the transition. And this year we shifted it to tell us what you need and what the priorities are in order to make that transition, so that we can actually set realistic expectations.
Thank you.
That's my understanding. I will say I'm very excited about this electric municipal vehicle presentation
can
at
afford
MMA.
it.
No, just the presentation at MMA, because I've been on, poor Guilford is so sick of me, talking about electric snowplows. All right. Okay. I know we're waiting on Lynn, and we'll come back. We will circle back if she has any other questions, but community health, community safety, and social justice.
This is where I did a lot of moving, but I don't know if
Okay.
I want to deal with that now or look at the
Initially,
goals.
yeah, let's deal with it. Initially I had been putting these in alphabetical, and then it got lost when we kind of reshuffled things.
Oh.
But tell me about because
Well,
it doesn't need to be alphabetical. If things are grouped
yeah,
together, it makes
I
more
didn't
sense.
notice that it was alphabetical, but
It's probably
what
not
I did
anymore.
on there's complete streets and breaking up social justice issues and stuff. So what I did was put the CRESS, I think CRESS is first.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I made an order where it's CRESS, reviewing public safety protocols, youth advocacy,
Mm-hmm.
programming the youth for youth empowerment,
All right, hang on.
resident oversight. And then I felt like it should be senior center, and then move to complete streets and the bike plan, because those are connected. So I don't know whether this is important to do or not, or I'm wasting our time, but I felt very bouncy reading it through.
Okay, so we're going resident oversight and then senior. I know this is not, I know this is probably driving people nuts that I'm doing it, but just to,
And then
this
I
thing got
had,
so messy and when we, so sorry,
Yeah.
you went to complete streets and then,
well, the complete streets and bike plan ended this whole thing. See,
oh, I
didn't
think you
see
were
this.
looking at a,
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
looking at a different sheet. See,
but I think we can get there from here. So we
okay,
had,
so what I had is
um,
press.
Yep,
And then I went to, and you had, and then I went to protocols.
yep. And then I'm
Um,
gonna pause for a second. I'm gonna then put this one, work with the council to identify and
Yes.
propose revisions. Okay.
Yep.
I will have to fix this later, but just for right
Yeah,
now.
and I apologize.
No, please don't apologize.
Okay,
You're
and then
fine.
in the way I wrote it out, and I have programming for the youth empowerment coming up.
Before that one though, okay, wait. Well, let me
Press
look.
protocols.
Yep, but this provide training, where would you want that one? I think it kind of fits maybe after youth empowerment.
Probably, yes. Did I not put that in here?
It might have been one that wasn't on your copy.
Oh, I thought it was, okay. No, that's a good one and it's important.
All right.
But it should be
Bear with-
separate. It should be above
It-
complete street, yeah.
It will be. I'm just gonna.
Yeah.
Last time we tried to do this, I hate doing tables in Word, but that's where we're at. So it got all messed up with
Yeah,
stuff. So
and I apologize. I didn't.
please do not apologize
No,
for
I pulled up the
bringing
wrong
thoughtful
thing.
comments.
Okay, so, before we leave climate action, a question was raised, under the, status column for the
Mhm.
first item, why we have this listed as new.
Right.
And
Uh,
it doesn't
yep.
seem to be new, but it's not a big thing, but if it's new, why is it new? Seems to
So
be
I
this is
think-
ongoing, right?
Yeah, my understanding, I don't know how I got another thing here. My understanding of this one was that it is phrased like in the past, we've just had do the transition. And so it is new in the sense of we're asking for the criteria and priorities versus I think last year it was start the transition. I don't have last year's document up, but I can look. So we could just say adapted.
Oh, yeah, why don't we do that? That makes more sense.
All right, I'm finally in business.
Awesome.
And
Welcome
on the
back.
battery
And
energy,
unfortunately, Kathy had a bunch of comments, but they were again to the old goals.
Okay. We will do
you
what we
put
can
them in
do.
late, we'll deal with it at the retreat. No, come on.
Really?
No, I don't disagree with you. It's just we will also still be at the retreat, so we will still have to deal with them.
Yeah, I know,
eventually.
but it's different.
I
There's
know.
something
Okay.
about the van being too specific. Didn't we get rid of that one?
That's under community health, community safety.
Right. The van is scheduled for 5 days, but has had driver shortage. She said delete, too specific.
I don't think there's
Kathy
such thing as
said
too
that?
specific. But didn't we debunk that? Isn't it, George,
thought-
didn't we look into this and it was 3 days a week and you wanted to up it to
5
5?
days. It should be 5 days.
That is my understanding, that it's not 5 days a week, but
Okay.
3 days.
I'm gonna leave it for now and we'll confirm it. I'd rather do that than have to put it back in later.
Okay, let
That
me
work
just
for folks?
mention, she also said delete, we have not discussed, and this would require staff time. The NoHo entity is a commission.
Oh, she's talking about the youth.
Yeah.
So again, this would be where a retreat, we are going to
Yes,
discuss it. I
right.
think that's how these goals need to start functioning. Otherwise we're in a chicken and egg situation
Yeah.
perpetually. So I think leave it in and let's have the discussion.
She suggested that we combine the streets and the pedestrians and bikes into
Those are
one
two different
item.
things. Those are two different
Yeah,
programs.
they should be separate.
Complete streets is through the state.
Yeah.
Bicycle and pedestrian is through the town.
And then
I
she-
also,
Go ahead, Pat.
sorry.
She suggested one action item for the senior center.
Hang on one second, Lynn. Go
I'm
ahead. Pat, was
waiting.
it? Yeah. Oh, you
Oh.
want to wait?
Yeah, I can wait. Go ahead, Lynn.
That's all.
we're treading very close to me having to do hands,
Why
so we'll
is
keep it cool.
this, the creation of the resident oversight, that's not a new goal,
It is not new. That might have been an error in transcribing.
Okay, because we could,
So-
I don't know, yeah, it's a carryover.
Is
And I-
carryover one word or two? One,
It
right?
doesn't, it's fine.
Okay. I get in a whole fight earlier today about bi-monthly and semi-monthly, so I'm all up in arms about words today.
Uh,
So could we go
Anything-
back up to the top here? and
Yes,
look
we
at
can.
the-
Are you, do you still want to go up to climate action, George?
No, I think climate action, we're done.
Oh,
unless
okay.
we miss
I think
anything
so
else
too.
to add.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right, in the first item, conduct assessment of the community responders for equity, safety and service CREST program. I'm gonna suggest, but this may also just have to be taken up at the retreat. This is one case, contra Lynn, where I think it's important that it's and report back to the council. I understand she will say that all these things require reporting back to the council, but in fact, that's actually not true. A lot of these things get done and we learn about it at the end of the year. This is something that I think we do want to have presented to the council
yes, I agree.
and discussed. So
I
Could we
agree.
say
conduct to present back to the council.
Can I suggest that if we do that,
Yeah.
we say by a specific date?
Oh, that's a good idea. That at least differentiates
It
it
differentiates
from
it.
the others.
Okay,
So this is where we'll have to ask Paul about feasibility, but do we have a rough date we want to put out there?
Hmm.
we give him what? At the maximum 3 months, maybe 2, I don't know,
I was
I
gonna
was gonna
say six.
6 months.
I'd say June
Well, if he
30th.
if he has to conduct it, and it's like we're contracting out for this. This isn't like a
No, I don't know.
right?
Okay,
Is
all
this
right.
is what we start
Okay,
I'd say by June 30.
all right, let's try that. Okay,
okay. This is new, right?
No, that is a
It's not new?
carryover. The only thing that's new is us asking
date.
for it.
Okay. And
The
this is
public
also a
that's a
carryover.
carryover.
And this is too.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They're slightly they're phrased a little bit differently, but they are
they're
the
basically
same
carryovers.
concept. Okay. This is
That's
new.
new.
Looking forward to the discussion. This
Kind of a carryover.
is kind of adapted, I guess. We're kind of doing an adapted.
Yeah,
it's,
We
oh,
sorry.
I mean, it's been pointed out to me that this is what HR does.
Yep.
Is HR not doing it? Is that why this is here? I don't understand why this is here.
This
it
is here because the counselor asked that it be included, and I tried to put everybody's in for GOL to discuss.
I don't, I think we have some criteria we apply to that. It's not just like if you throw something in the pile, we get to put it in here. Is it?
the criteria is then GOL discusses it.
Well, I think there's also whether it's measurable, whether it's actually actionable. If this is something that a department's already doing, what's the point?
Is I'm sorry, Georgian. I'm thinking back to some a conversation with Pamela Nolan Young where she'd like to have some kind of report on the number of residents, employees, et cetera, who are participating and stuff like that. And I don't know whether we want to add something like that or not.
Does she not do, or do they not her specifically, but is there any sort of like annual reporting that they would do
I
to?
honestly don't know.
Okay. I think the difference here was I didn't put this one in, so I am interpreting here, but I think that the difference, this is a carryover, and there wasn't anything specifically catered, I guess, to the town council.
That's right.
We are obviously always welcome to go as a member of the public to things like that they do offer. And I know that I know because my colleagues at Amherst College offered some as well to the Amherst, town of Amherst staff, but as well as our own staff in-house. Yeah, I mean, we can take it out, but I think the difference was that the inclusion of town council was there. And I guess we don't know the status of it.
Here's, if no one's gonna comment on what Anna just said, this is where I would like to see. Where is it? The youth programming be where we have create and appoint an advisory council for youth and BIPOC youth,
Mhm.
LGBT, blah, blah. Then it should be that we talk then about coordinating program for youth empowerment. Those two things and the provide training would go underneath that and
Okay.
connected to the next.
I'll switch the order. Pat, do you want to change? Did I just delete something? No.
No,
That's what I was doing wrong last time. Okay. Did you want to,
let me see if I can pull up, hold on one second.
did you have any comments on the wording here? I guess is what I
Yeah,
meant.
that's what I'm.
So I'm sorry. I mean, maybe this is again something that will just have to take place at a retreat. But
Yeah, that could be, and I could bring, I mean, basically what
I just,
Pamela was saying, to ensure that town staff participate.
Mm,
And support PD for staff through promotion of MMA workshops and other training opportunities. And
We
ensure
have that.
PD
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And ensure PD opportunities are accessed equitably by tracking staff, accessing PD opportunities. And I don't know whether, I don't even know if I want to put those in. I just said that I would say something about them to her.
Can we
Oh, no.
revisit that when we get to the management section? Because I think that that's where we have that more explicitly stated
That's-
out.
That's
Um,
okay.
And I
That's
want to, I
fine.
do want to talk about that, but I think it's more, it's down there more. So does anyone want to make anything concrete about this? Do we want to keep it in and have a discussion at the retreat, or do we want to take it out and have someone pitch to put it back in?
my personal desire would be to take it out. If someone wants to put it back in, they can put it back in and we can discuss it.
Okay. Anyone?
I'd like to see it be there.
Okay. Lynn? You're muted.
I just leave it in for now. I'm not,
All right.
I feel like it is an HR function. I feel like lumping the council in with everybody else is not the same. It's just different.
I hear you, Lynn, and George and I've had this conversation, but it feels to me like the town council has not. Maybe some people have individually, but they have not accessed these trainings. And I think that that really bothers me. It bothered me when Chalonnet and I tried to do it with you guys and it turned out to be a bummer of a workshop, not our fault. But some people learn some really important things anyway. I think that we've kept ourselves out of this, and that feels uncomfortable to me.
As a
We
body.
are town employees too. I mean, in a different
Mhm.
area, but that's what we are.
Yeah. Okay.
Can
All
I
right.
ask about the
Yeah,
item
go ahead,
above
George.
it?
Yes, this one, youth empowerment.
Yes. We just had the rec department identify, promote, and coordinate programming for youth empowerment. And we just had a long report in Paul's most recent report about that.
Yeah.
What are we asking here? It's not a, I mean, what, I just don't understand. I mean, this is just saying, I mean, this just was done. What are we asking rec to do? They've already done it.
It is, and the programs are ongoing. Is that correct, George?
Yeah, they're, I
Yeah.
mean, they are what they are and they're ongoing.
Yeah.
And if there's a specific purpose here or goal, I'd like to hear it, but it just basically says, you know, rec, you just did this, but keep doing it or do it again, or.
I think this is, and if I'm interrupting you, I'll be quiet. It seems to me that the town council has not actually ever really discussed the Youth Empowerment Center. And it became clear that we wanted to work on the goals and that the rec department has taken up an enormous job, and they've been doing it, and they've been doing it well. And I'm very, very pleased. I know there are tensions in the rec department, but overall, they're doing a really good job. That does not satisfy a segment of our population. And so what are we doing with this? I think this is a really good question that George is putting out there. I
just
think it
asking why it's
might
here.
work, George,
Yeah.
if we said to continue to identify and continue to promote. And it's not, maybe that's a cop-out. I don't know. And you
I
know.
mean, it's not as if we're, I mean, if there's a problem with youth programming, if we don't actually know what youth programs we have, if we're not actually promoting them and we're not coordinating them, then I guess maybe there's a place for this. But to
So-
best of my knowledge, that's not a problem. And unless somebody, yeah, so why is it here?
Because it is a problem. So I think that George,
So make it,
when we
please.
first brought this up, I think the changes that we've made to this were that we if I'm pulling back from, God, we've been talking about this for so long. Pulling back from the earlier conversations, we did change the wording of this goal after we talked about how in the town manager's self-evaluation, he identified all these things that none of us had any idea were happening. And that in that, I'm not going to speak for all of us or any of us, I'll speak for myself. I think I and other people said this sentiment as well, would have changed the goal on create youth programming, which is, I believe, what it was saying before, something along the lines of identify and create. And so we changed the wording to be identify, promote, and coordinate, because there were so many all spread out over the place that we were like, there's got to be some sort of pulled together, coordinated promotion of this and naming of it, because it is happening. And so that's my recollection of why this is still in here and phrased the way it is. We are not saying create new youth programming. We are saying figure out what it is, coordinate it, and promote it. That's the difference between this goal and prior year's goals from my recollection, but I'm happy to be corrected if I'm having a false memory here. It has been known to happen.
I'm simply saying that this is already being done and I don't understand why it's here.
Okay.
I don't
Let's
understand
leave
what
it
it's
at-
asking that's new or that it's, I even know how you would, I mean, yeah, so. I'd like it to come
Lit.
out.
Thank you, George.
I understand why you would like it to be gone. The reason I believe it's here is because of the ongoing, unaddressed thing that came out of CSSJC,
Mhm.
and it was about a youth empowerment center. And in fact, what the town has done and paid for is the identification of all of the youth programs around town.
Right.
And if we're going to ever confront this, it would be at a retreat, and it would be to say, this is what we can afford to do or not.
Mhm.
And
So this is a document for the town manager telling him what we want him to do. It sounds like this is something we need to do. So this should be in a different document called the town council goals.
no,
So
but
again, yeah.
it would be a budget item if we were going to create a youth empowerment center. And it's kind of this leftover thing that nobody has been willing to address.
And I
Well-
still feel like it might help, but nothing will help George right now. I know you and I love you, George, but nothing's going to change your position.
I just want to know what's here.
Continue to identify, promote, and coordinate, because there are always new programs. And they can be national programs that, that we take on. I would love to see, and this certainly wouldn't fly in CSSJC, but, the police department has been involved in some of in the Arise stuff, which has been really wonderful. And I'd like to see more things come from other departments. I don't know.
So my thought on this is that we used to have a goal of create a plan for a youth empowerment center. And then
it's,
we had never actually had the conversation at the council level of, do we need this? And so I think this goal arose out of identifying, do we need this? So if that
Yeah.
is the end, I'm going to anticipate George's next comment, and I could be wrong, George, but my anticipation of your next comment is that then we should explicitly say to determine whether or not we need one. I guess, right? Okay. So I think that if that is what we want to explicitly say, then we should put it here. Otherwise, this is kind of a meaningless goal because it's already happening. I think, Pat, whenever you absolutely were correct that we should say continue this. But that's not a red flag, but it's like an orange flag, a persimmon flag, if you will, of we need to clarify this goal better about why
Well,
it should be in here if it's just continuing. So maybe we should have the conversation of to identify a need for a youth empowerment center or determine the level of need for a youth empowerment center. Do we want to just explicitly call it out?
I think that the way you said it initially.
What did I say?
Well, that's why I can't remember. I'm too old. Identify, promote, and coordinate programming for youth empowerment, and then there was something about to determine the
Oh.
need for a youth empowerment center, which to me means a building, a special room, or, stuff like that. And we may even have that because a lot of this is happening at the schools. So, but yeah. This is gonna be an awful conversation, but the council avoids it.
Right. I'm here
So-
for it. Let's go. It's gonna
And,
be a long day.
Yeah,
So why shouldn't it be brought up as a budgetary request under the JCPC process? If somebody
Because
wants
it's
a
not
youth
just a
empowerment
capital,
center, I'm sorry?
It's not a capital request. It would include staffing, it would include operating. It's a big deal.
So then it goes to FinCom, I guess. I don't know. It's a really a question both of just, there are lots of needs and there's only so much money. So the
But where does
question
the
is,
conversation start, George?
for the need for this?
Yeah, or like you said, bring it to FinCom. So like are you saying that the process should be a counselor brings a motion forward saying establish a youth empowerment center?
A counselor would have to bring it
Yeah.
if they want it. So I guess what I'm hearing is that if this means anything, it's asking the rec people, asking Paul to tell rec to yet again put together some kind of report on what youth programming is at the current point and what they're doing to coordinate and promote it for the purpose of determining whether we need a youth empowerment center.
Yeah, we changed the meaning of the goal, right? Like initially this goal meant do this better than we've been doing it because the call is coming from the community that we need a youth empowerment center because there's no programming for youth. That's a rough amalgamation of things we've heard. And we as the council know there is because Paul told us, but if the community doesn't know, we need Paul to focus on kind of the PR of it, right? The promotion and coordination of it. So that was initially kind of what this said to me. But what it came from initially was this request for a youth empowerment center. So we've now changed the meaning of this goal to be now talk to the council and tell us what is the level of need? What would this do in our community?
I mean, there's an enormous level of need for seniors, but we're not going to have a study on what seniors need in order to determine whether we're going to build a senior center. We're just not going to build a senior center. So why don't we have that in here as well? Anyway.
I'm gonna suggest we pick a direction on this goal and then know that we're gonna have to have this conversation at the council. I'm gonna try to pull us back to from GOL's perspective. Is this specific? Is this getting at something that's tangible, not necessarily physically tangible, but like understandable and doable within a year? So I think once we start kind of not infighting, but in discussioning to the level that we currently are, I think it's going to be better solved with a vote at the council at some point. Lynn.
I agree.
Okay. Not to delve right back in, but do we want to keep this last part in or
Well,
no?
we just added something now. So we just added to determine level of need for a youth empowerment center.
Yeah. Do we want to keep that or no?
I'd take it out.
Okay.
The
because
argument
it's
for
a
keeping it in.
trigger.
Well,
So
the
take it
argument for
out.
keeping it in is it forces us to confront something that we've
Right,
reflected
but
upon.
somehow or other, we need
I
to,
think we're going to still confront it, to be honest with you.
I
Well,
hope
it's here
so.
though, then at least it's in black and white and people can talk about it.
Then leave it in.
Okay.
I just, yeah.
How about
Uh,
separate youth empowerment center?
DeAngelis, do you want it separate?
I don't, whatever.
Okay.
We can move on.
Any issue, we talked about this one already. Any issues with creation of a resident oversight board? This is a carryover from before. We're just saying now propose the plan for it. We tried, I think this was where we got a bit more specific and more reasonable,
Mhm.
feasible. George, here's your senior center one. We did have it in
Very
here.
important one.
Develop a plan for
Yes.
addressing critical space and program needs at the senior
Mhm.
center, including an ADA accessible transportation program that runs 5 days a week.
My complaint here is that I
Yes.
think this is two different things, and it should be broken out, but I will let that go. And this is new.
Yeah,
Yes,
Okay. Complete streets,
yep,
Amherst bicycle pedestrian network
Yep.
plan. I love that one.
where did this come from?
This was a counselor
just-
ad.
We just passed,
who?
we just
It's not the
adopted
same
a
thing.
state,
No, this is a different thing.
so what is this asking?
This is asking to, I don't even know if this is legal. This is asking for streets that are already posted to reduce to 25 miles an hour. I don't actually think this follows the legal process, but
So it's not actionable, and so why is it here? It should come
I
out.
want to do more research into its actionability. I should have done that. I'm sorry. I had sent this counselor a long thing from DOT about how to change speed limits, but
Well, first of
yeah.
all, Paul can't do it. I mean, he can't just unilaterally reduce speed limits. It's a complicated process and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not even sure what it's asking. I mean, basically every road in Amherst is going to be 25 miles an hour.
Only densely settled roads,
Densely
which is
settled roads.
defined by, we have a definition for that.
This doesn't seem to be the place to be taking this up, but anyway.
I personally agree
Right.
with you. I think we could get, honestly, this one, I think on actionability. I think that the process is more up to the council than anything else. I can look it up if people want me to do that right now, but yeah,
So why don't we just take it out?
okay.
Or is that,
And if they want to put it back in, they're more
they
than
could do
welcome
that
to.
at the
And they
retreat?
can hopefully make a case for what they actually want. But we can't make the case for them.
Okay. We're done with community health, community safety. I hate the double community,
Mm.
y'all. It is the same dang thing, but I'm just sharing that I sometimes do let things go.
I mean, I just want to
Just-
say in passing that
Go
we
ahead.
continue as a body to just pile up, plans and programs with absolutely no regard or thought for cost or staff time. We just heap this stuff up,
Yep.
and we just look to Paul and say, well, good luck. There's no acknowledgement of any kind of fiscal reality. There's no acknowledgement of any kind of staff reality. It's just a wish list. And I guess I just don't know where we can have this discussion. Maybe if Paul were here, he could help leaven us a bit by saying, well, either that's already being done, or he could say, there's just no way we can afford that. Or he would say, I just don't have the staffing for that. So we just continue to add and add and add and add without any discussion or any thought. And I include my own in this as well. Reflection on what is this actually going to cost and what's this going to mean for staff. And so I can see why he looks at this and just puts his hands in his face and goes, well, but it just seems to be, why can't we have this discussion? Why can't we say one of the categories is how much is this going to cost? I mean, is this going to have a financial impact? And if so, many of these will have financial impact.
Mhm.
Certainly they'll all have staff impacts.
Yep.
And there's no prioritization. There's no sense of what's more important or less important. It's just a wish list.
George,
So,
would it seems to me that if we could have an honest retreat, those are two increasingly
talk about,
important
yeah.
issues, the finances and the,
Right.
what is the council's actual priority? Not what you think your voters want, but what is each councilor's priority? Because I think we all have the the community centered, but but in different ways. But so I think that those questions need to be at the retreat. I also would like to see somebody else necessarily saying them, because sometimes people automatically don't listen to you about it, but the points you're bringing up are critical and important.
But it seems like
So-
we as GOL really don't have, there's not much we can do about this. We're
Right.
just sort of like a conduit for just about anything anybody wants to put in here, unless
Right.
it's just completely beyond the pale or something that we can't imagine how you could even measure it.
For a
Okay.
second because my internet started to freeze. I'll share again in a second. I agree with Pat that this is especially that financial part is exactly part of the conversation we should be having at a retreat. We might not know exactly what the financial implications are, but we should look at how many of these are, and kind of even if it's like a 1 through 3 scale of estimated staff time impact and estimated dollars, right? That could help get us in the right direction. In terms of priority, though, that's why this list being specific to a year is so important, because the reality of this is that we are saying all of these things are our priorities. And I think to go within this document to try to prioritize further is going to be really challenging, because we start to pit things that are different size. We went through this last. We are putting things against one another that are different sizes or that overlap or all of that. So I think we need to look at this document as saying these are our priorities for the year. And that might mean cutting this down. I will also say we have taken a lot out as GOL. There's been a lot thrown in here that we have pretty brutally cut that we are going to see put right back on here, and we are going to have to explain why we cut it. And when we start our discussion about this retreat in hopefully 8 minutes, we are going to need to back each other up in saying, what are you expecting to have happen in a year? Is that feasible? And are there financial implications that we need to consider, even if we don't know what specifically they are yet? So kind of a 2-piece answer there of, I hope this committee has done a really, really good job at pushing each other to be specific in these goals. And we're not perfect on them yet, but they're a lot better than they were. I will stand by that. And I think that what we need to do at a retreat is say, if these are our priorities, because my personal belief is you can't necessarily prioritize more within it. And if something isn't a top priority, it shouldn't be in here. This is our priority document. To prioritize within it is saying basically, we're not expecting you to do this year, so it shouldn't be in here in the first place. I'm going to get off my soapbox now.
Yeah, we haven't. Why should we?
I'm going to get right back on it in 5 seconds. So just for a
Okay.
minute. All right. Let's keep pushing through this so that we can talk about this retreat. But okay. Where were we? I think we
We're
covered
housing and
community health
economic
and safety. I
vitality.
think we're on housing. Okay.
Yeah.
Complete implementation of the residential rental bylaw. This is continuation.
Yes.
It's just kind of the next phase.
And I'll say that I have some changes around here too, but let's go through.
Okay.
Those are mine. No,
Okay.
I don't need to go through my order changes. So let's go through the goals and then
Okay.
that takes longer.
All right. Continue to work towards establishment of a year-round shelter.
That's ongoing. It's a continuation.
The one thing that Kathy said, it might add, come to the council with a cost to the Amherst of proceeding. Will this be grant funded? And
Yeah,
that's all part of the answer. I don't think we should amend anything based on that comment.
Yeah.
Mm.
So this is one where I don't have a problem with this goal
Mhm.
specifically, but this is one where this is not specific. So I say what I'm about to say, knowing that this
Mhm.
isn't what Paul would do, but he could take the tiniest little step and call this complete. I don't think he will. I think he's diligently working on it. But if there were something specific that we are expecting to have happen, this is where we would specify it.
Mhm.
I'm okay with this, just naming that this is not specific. So we're breaking our rule a little bit here, but it could just
Yeah.
be because we don't know, and that's fine.
This is one of my favorite goals. I don't know if the town can afford it.
Yeah.
So it does seem to me that,
So it could be specific, and, come back to us with, a plan of
pla-
how we're going to pay for a
yeah,
year-round shelter.
well, then the plan needs to include what it would be. I mean, we have talked about a section that is a 20, a daily shelter and also some housing that would be more permanent for people. So basically, we need to understand what is it that what are we trying to design and what are the potential costs? And because
If we
we may
say-
not, and I want this dreadfully because I know a lot of these folks, but I don't know whether we can afford it. We can't afford a youth empowerment building. We can afford programming.
I like the idea of just saying a presentation of a funding plan.
Because that would include what Pat's getting at, of if we get to a funding plan, it means we've determined what it would
Right, there's a
look
path
like.
forward. There's a
Okay,
path
I'm
forward.
And that
comfortable.
also
I'm trying to find what-
satisfies Kathy.
Yes, yes.
Amazing.
Well, we
So
don't
legitimate
have
question.
to satisfy
No,
anybody
but it's a legitimate
except
question.
Right.
me,
This is
Moving
a
on.
5-year, this is a 5-year project.
Yeah,
easily,
If
easily.
it goes but it won't go anywhere if there's no funding, so.
right.
Did
Okay.
Did we delete the one on track and report on Valley CDC experience with Ball Lane for first-time home buyers projects for lessons?
What?
That was never in here.
That was never
Yeah,
in
well,
here.
she said delete it, so forget that one.
Okay, good.
All right.
I don't know what
Done.
document she was reading, but that's, yeah. Okay.
I
I
do
think
have
that-
propose
yeah.
and implement that I know George doesn't like, but or George doesn't like that the way I put it in here, but let's go. Next is meet at minimum twice annually with UMass Amherst. I should say UMass Amherst.
All right, I'd like to make a suggestion here and see if.
Okay.
everything- I'd like to focus this specifically on housing opportunities. And I'm not so sure about a minimum twice annually, but basically what we're saying is we want you to meet with UMass Amherst and Amherst College, and I guess you could throw in Hampshire College too, to identify parcels for possible housing opportunities.
I
So,
agree with
George-
George.
Should be housing,
take-
focused on housing.
So hang on one second. So
Meet at minimum.
first off, the at minimum twice annually was because that is what is in our strategic partnership agreement with UMass. And so we wanted to make sure that was being met and thought that was a good number. So we should maybe
It's
apply
not
that
a
to the
good
other
number, it's not
institutions.
enough.
It's a minimum number, minimum number. The other part here is okay, so George, so you're saying,
The First one
oh,
saying
and the
this is
reason
a
why
year
Hampshire
doc-
is in here was because Paul talked about the land wealth that Hampshire
Right.
has, especially as it has to do with housing. So you're saying it would read meet at minimum twice annually with UMass Amherst, Amherst College, and Hampshire College to identify parcels for housing opportunities?
Yes.
Yes,
That's what I'm saying, focusing on housing only. And again, I would argue take out at minimum twice annually. This is a 1-year document. We want him at least at some point in the coming year to meet with these institutions to identify possible housing opportunities on their land. And tell us what he learns, which, who knows, but that's what I'm suggesting.
I like that minimum twice annually because it makes it specific. I know, I hear you. I'm just saying that's why I like it in there, is because it
Just
gives
from his
us a
perspective, he looks
point.
at it and he thinks, you want me at minimum to meet with him? He has enough trouble meeting them with once, and now he's gonna meet two.
He
three,
has to meet with
four.
them. They have to meet with him twice. UMass
But this
does.
is on a specific issue. This is, we're asking him to meet with them specifically.
It does,
talk about
changes
how-
the messaging of the goal. Lynn?
I think the real issue is work with. Meetings are one thing, work with UMass Amherst College and Hampshire College to identify housing opportunities. Whether or not they're ever going to come up with parcels isn't nearly as important as they may say, we're going to do this for housing, but we have nothing to do with the parcel. They're not going to give us the parcel, believe me. We
Well-
asked for a parcel for
Mm,
the DPW and UMass Amherst just about croaked.
now, wait a minute, Amherst gave us a parcel for the DPW, we rejected it.
No, this was UMass Amherst.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misheard.
No, I totally agree, Pat.
Okay,
So UMass.
I'm gonna-
yeah.
I'm gonna
So-
climb on the top of my hill to die. That's super vague. If we are comfortable with it being super vague, that's okay. But to say, work with UMass Amherst, Amherst College, and Hampshire College to identify housing opportunities is really, really vague and broad. So
Well,
if that's as good as we can get, that's as good as we can get, and that's fine. I just
Yeah,
needed,
but-
I gotta name it.
But what you're saying is, oh, if he meets twice and that happens to come up, he's okay. So it's still not,
We're saying he has to talk about it twice. I'm
Yeah.
not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you,
Yeah.
Pat, that it's still vague. The issue with this particular goal is that it hinges on the other party coming through. This isn't fully in Paul's control. So there's only so far we can get with this one.
Mhm.
We just got to say, do your best. And
That's
so we
why
were
it's
trying,
work with.
I like work with.
that means they have to be able to work with him on, they have to be willing to work with him on
He may
it.
report back at the end of the year, I met with them and they just weren't interested. They told me to go away.
And we get a different story from
Right. well, then we
Amherst
can-
College.
Yeah, we compare stories then at that point.
Right, and then we
can say, well,
compare
that's not
stories,
what we're
because
hearing.
their thing is, oh, we're doing this, well,
Right.
we're giving you.
My
money.
issue,
Mhm.
my issue here is that like, this could look like an email and then it's done. And that's my concern, not my actual concern. Again, not about Paul, but for me, I liked you have to meet to sit down specifically on housing issues at least twice a year. If you meet with them about other stuff another time, that's fine. But twice this year, we want you to sit down with these institutions to talk about housing. I liked that. I'm not saying that is the maximum number, but this makes this, I mention it once in a meeting and it's done because they didn't want to meet me on it. The meeting twice per year kind of puts the insistence of persistence on it.
It just means he has to have a second meeting where they're gonna say the same thing.
Right.
Hey, that's better than just one where they say no in my mind.
which
But
is,
all
you
right,
know,
that's fine. I'll leave it here. I do plan to be a pain about this though, and
That's
how
fine,
random or
that's
how
fine.
broad it is.
That's fair.
So
Yeah.
come up with a better argument for me next time.
Okay.
All right. I
We
don't
need
think this
7
is new
votes.
anymore, to be
No,
clear.
it's not.
This is now not new.
Good.
All right.
And where did this come from? The next one, I'm sorry.
That came from me. Do you have anything
And
to thought about
the
it?
argument here is that homes
We
are
need
so
this.
expensive in Amherst that why, there are better ways to spend our money.
On
But-
roads
Uh,
and sidewalks and schools
No,
and
whatever.
senior
but they just-
centers.
All
whatever,
right,
right.
as the person who wrote this in here, let me explain why I
No.
think this is important. We have, as we know, a lot of capital A affordable housing. We have a lot of affordable rentals, especially with a couple new homeownership opportunities coming in. I am not saying that the town of Amherst needs to be the one doling out funds for a first-time homebuyer program. But what I would like to see is what might the town do to coordinate this process? How might the town, this is saying propose a process to create and implement this. It could be that there isn't a process, right? Like I think that if that is where it comes to, if it's this is too expensive, this isn't doable, then that's the answer. But I'd like to see us look into what that process would look like. Because a first-time homebuyer assistance program, when we talk about wanting to bring more families into the area, wanting to bring that missing middle, right? This is one of the barriers. The reality is that down payments are one of the barriers to buying a home. So down payment assistance programs exist in many places across the country. We have external organizations that do run them, and a program could be that the town works with Valley CDC or with another organization. But
already
I would
do.
like to see, the town actually create and implement something that is town supported and organized to help address that need.
The town already works
Well, I
with
think the
Valley
point is
CDC
specific,
to
it's
coordinate.
specific, there's an argument for it. I'm not saying I would support it at retreat, but, that, at least I now know where it comes from and I hear the argument for it. And I think probably it just stays in and we'll have to hash it out at retreat.
Pat, my understanding is that the subsidy that Valley CDC offers still has income requirements on it. Is that true?
Mhm.
I think
Probably.
what I was
Yeah.
talking about was more broad than that for first-time homebuyers.
Okay, that's
To
fine.
kinda
It can
hit
be
that
there,
middle.
but yeah,
Okay, well,
but I don't see the
Uh,
town setting up a fund because we
Right.
don't have the money.
I mean, you could have the housing trust do it, but it would have to meet their affordability requirements.
You'd have to give them some money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll
So-
just stick to it. Right. This is gonna have to be
ADU
happen anyway,
zoning?
so why is this here?
Because we want it to happen.
It
Because
has
it's
to
still a
be.
priority. Even though it has to happen, we're giving him a checkbox to say he did this because we know that it's going to take time and effort and work to do. So putting it in here, it is a gimme, but it's still it's a priority that we expect him to do this year. I'm going to push us a little bit faster because I do want
Okay,
us
well,
to get,
I'm gonna jump in then.
oh, with your
because-
reorganizing?
Yeah, just a little bit. If you
Okay.
would, propose revisions to zoning bylaws, leave it there. Then move up propose revisions to the zoning bylaws, where supported by the master plan. And then third, or that
No, that's
is
an old
begin
document
work
today.
on revising and updating the master plan. We don't follow the master plan anyway. We could submit the same one we have and we'd still be, but but it's a begin on work on revising. It's a required revision or a review. It isn't, so just working on the master plan. Yeah, all right, I'm sorry, I'm getting bougie.
Getting what?
Bougie.
I like that. Did I do what you were saying?
Yeah, because it seems like
Revisions?
zoning should be all together. You've got
I
the
put it,
ADU is a zoning bylaw.
yeah, so I have
Revisions-
ADU and then revisions to zoning bylaws and
And
then
revisions
revisions
to-
to zoning bylaws again. But doing two different things with those revisions.
Mhm.
I just need to mention that
Lynn?
during the retreat, Kathy will object to this one, but I don't think we should change.
Which one?
Which
Oh,
one?
the stuff about ADUs and rezoning.
ADUs, the state law one?
It, just
Okay.
the whole stuff. She says delete,
Okay,
delete, so, yeah,
Good luck with that, right?
yeah.
okay. I
It's-
think that this one will be a fun discussion.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Yeah. We could have already done that.
Yeah.
I know, Pat. All right. So I thought I fixed the formatting here, but I didn't. Okay. Lynn, your hand is still up. Did you have?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
No,
that's okay. Carry over. Okay.
I did what I needed
We're on
to do.
to thank you. We're on to administration and leadership. This is where Pat, I think we were talking. This is
Yeah,
what we
and
told
I'm
you to hold on
okay with
to.
how it's written here.
Okay.
Except I don't think, what does it mean? Explore strategic
Okay.
options to make it more attractive and rewarding.
Yeah.
It's
I could
awful.
tell you, raise
It's awful.
salaries,
Yeah, no,
we
it's
don't need to.
Right.
Yes, we do because Pat, that's actually not always true. So we can do salary studies, we can do anti-discrimination studies. Those are all really important things that we should do. But when you look, sorry, this is now like squarely in what I do for work, so I'm really pumped up about it. Sorry,
All
George.
right.
You actually need to create a plan to do this. We, as the town council, this is where we get into the whole expertise thing. We shouldn't make the assumption that we know how to make Amherst, the town of Amherst, a great place to work. But what we are saying to Paul is we want you to focus strategically on exploring how to make the town of Amherst a great place to work. That might mean looking at our hiring practices. That might mean looking at our salaries again. We don't know what that looks like, but we are telling him we want you to focus some time and energy this year to actually looking strategically, not just draft something, but dedicate some time to how do you make Amherst a more attractive and rewarding place to work,
Okay,
looking specifically at continuing education, supervision, and leadership training.
So this,
Lynn
don't
has
think-
her hand up.
Lynn, I'm going to go to Lynn and then
You and I are
George.
being bad.
I don't have any hands.
Oh,
I just need to share Kathy's. She said she thinks, do we have evidence that we are not attractive? Maybe better to ask for exit interviews. We have many long-term employees. Working conditions are an issue for fire and DPW. I
oh,
think
and
we
for
leave
other
it-
departments as well.
Leave
so.
it the way it is.
I'm going to leave it the way it is and I can fight that fight, but exit interviews would be part of that strategic option.
Yes.
Pat and then George.
Not on that one, so if George wants to speak to that one, he can.
So this was put in, and correct me if I'm wrong, by council.
Which one are you talking about, George?
The explore strategic
Gotcha,
options
okay,
for making.
just making
Amherst-
sure.
Right,
This was actually a
it-
GOL creation, George.
well, at least in my conversation with this counselor, it was driven by some of the things that were said in staff reviews of Paul, complaining about or expressing concerns about ability to access continuing education, getting supervisory opportunities, and lack of chances to get leadership training. So it's really, it was in response, at least one person understood it to be in response to things they had read in evaluations. But it sounds like, yeah, go ahead.
It started that way. We initially had this in here as guarantee continuing ed opportunities. And then the discussion that we had was we don't actually know what is currently available, and we don't know, again, kind of what continuing it, that's super broad and doesn't actually fully address the concern about a healthy and engaging work environment. So we included that considering access to continuing education, supervision, and leadership training as part of this. But we wanted the conversation that we as a committee had was that we wanted this broader look at what actually would make the town of Amherst a more attractive and rewarding place to work. So that was the evolution of this goal. It did start off as, I think it was like guarantee continuing education opportunities to all staff. And Paul said that's not feasible in the way it's written, right? So we had looked at adaptation, and I'm open to corrections on my memory if I'm wrong on that. Pat, and then George.
I'm not speaking to this.
Okay,
So-
George.
I'm done
Okay.
with this one.
All right, Pat, go ahead with
The
two
last
other
one,
ones we still have
incorporate
to have.
anti-racism training. It seems to me that there, or I'm not sure how to say it, gender bias, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, Q plus whatever issue, because it isn't just anti-racism. I've been mistreated when people found out I was a lesbian doing something.
Does this cover
And
and incorporate anti-racism and anti-discrimination training into onboarding process?
yeah, because it's kind of broad. It could be gender, it could be sexual preference. Yeah, I don't know. George? Go for it,
First of all,
George.
it's an HR question. And assumption is that HR does this. Is there evidence that HR is
There-
not doing this?
Paul told us, but yeah, so this is not currently built in in our conversation with Paul, this initially was a super broad one that said train every single department in anti-racism training. And Paul said feasibility wise, we don't have the staff or the time or the bandwidth to do this. But why don't you pick an area for this year? So he recommended onboarding. So I don't know what there currently is, but this
All right,
particular
his
recommendation came from Paul
All right, fair enough.
as to where to target it for the coming year.
Can we go to the top one?
Yes, sir. This one?
Yes,
Clarify. Okay.
I'm all
Sorry.
ears.
How am I the
So
spokesperson
some
for
people
all
go
of
on
the
the
other
website
counselors?
and they can't find an answer to a question.
I can't find an answer half the time.
for-
All right. Okay. And I'm a
So who is
supposedly
who's
tech savvy
what are
human.
we asking him to do here?
We're asking for, my reading of this goal is am I doing a good job so far? Is to ask Paul to task Sam, who's our social media and website person, with a more clearly accessible flow chart of who to talk to if you have a concern about XYZ. Kind of like a 311 sort of situation, but just an image, or website or whatever. I don't know what form it would take. That's not up to me. But basically saying, if you have an issue with a pothole, you talk to this person. If you have an issue with, like, what are the common reasons why someone would reach out to the town, and where can they go from there? It's just asking for, it could be we leave this open to the town to determine how this gets put out there to the public, but it might be a social media page, it might be a website landing page, we don't know. But this came from, I think, a lot of resident requests saying, I don't know where to go when I have a concern about XYZ. And so we wanted to just clearly kind of delineate that tree of who to talk to if you have concerns about.
Countless emails that I get have to do with, I don't know who to ask. I don't know who to talk to. So I think that
And we think somehow that the IT or Sam will be able to come up with a one-stop shop for all the questions that people ask and that they can't find answers.
possible.
I am fairly convinced that Sam's talents are boundless.
Oh,
and
I
she
don't
will
doubt her
figure out a
talent.
way. No, meaning like truly, I think that this is what we're asking for this to be a priority. And it may not be perfect, but we would like for them to prioritize
All right.
pitching a solution for this. Okay. Any other ones in this? Okay, yeah. Any other ones in this category here? We've
We
got
one, I'm sorry, about gender bias in salary promotions and job responsibilities.
yep. What's the
And
question?
finally, the last one, it's not clear what this actually means, though I think, and it's not clear how he's gonna actually, what would it
Yeah,
mean?
what
for
is,
him?
what are the specifics?
I think specifically what this is asking, though it doesn't say it, is looking at the duties of the assistant town manager and the town manager. And given the amount of reports, et cetera, and demands on on both those positions, whether there is a need for a third position or some kind of reorganization, something along those lines. So top management means town manager and assistant town manager. And
Mhm.
organizational structure and distribution of responsibilities is a kind of backhanded way of saying, you know, is the job manageable? And because some of us are getting the impression that it's not, and we'd like to have some kind of, I guess it have to be outside, but some kind of a sense of what could be done to address that. But maybe, I don't know. Does that belong? I don't know.
George, I think you're bringing up a really interesting point here and addressing one of the things that I have issue with this goal is, again, review could
Yeah.
be something really simple, could be something really big. You just mentioned a kind of part of that spectrum of possibility, which is conduct or engage in an external review. If that's what we're asking for, that's something different
Not
that
if
we
we
should
have to pay
specify,
for it.
which we would have to pay for it.
Yes, we would.
But I think that's, again, just to be clear to you all in the council, this could be accomplished by Paul looking at his job description and the organizational structure and saying, okay, I reviewed it,
Right.
done. And that's, again, not saying that's what he would do, but if we think about like Devil Paul and Angel Paul, like what is the worst thing Paul could do and the best thing Paul could do? And neither of those are truly Paul's human being self. So, worst version of a town manager would say, all right, I reviewed it, it's done. Check. Best version would really deeply look into this, would work with HR on it. That would be maybe my suggestion is, alongside human resources department, review the organizational structure. And this for me is thinking about long-term health of the town in this position, right? And so while we want Paul to stay here forever, at some point in his life, he will probably want to retire. And we need to make sure that we have a town manager distribution of responsibilities that's doable for someone else coming in. And that's like all of those things. So I don't think this is a bad goal, but I do think that it's really broad. And if we could be clearer, I don't know.
It really is a
Well,
question of whether we think it's priority enough to hire a consultant to do it, and if we don't, it should come out. We shouldn't be
Fair way of
asking
looking at
Paul
it.
to do it. I think that's pointless.
It's a
It
fair
has to,
point.
somebody's gonna have to look at it from the outside. And that's money and that's a consultant. And so maybe it should just come out.
And the question is this year the year we want to be doing that with all the other goals? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, in terms of consultant, hiring a consultant, yeah, that's a legitimate question. I guess the question for this committee is whether they think it should be left in and the council as a whole should discuss it, or whether we should just take it out. I don't think this is asking Paul to do it. I don't intend it to be a request for him, but it's a request to hire a consultant to do it. And it should probably say that.
I think if that's the expectation, it should absolutely say that.
That's
So-
what I
If
would
that's
like
the
it to say.
expectation, I think it should be taken out.
Okay.
Because you
We
feel we
can't
don't have
afford
the
it.
money for it and it's not that big of a priority.
It's, yeah, there's so many, I mean, we couldn't even get $1 million for roads and sidewalks, and if you watch what's happening with the weather, we're really fucked. So,
You want me to talk about schools again, Pat?
Let's not
no,
speak
because
French. No
because that's
French
not the
words.
only issue on it. Let's do that another time, you and I
No
together
French
over
in this
coffee.
meeting.
All of the issues are really important
All
right
right,
now.
let's take it out.
No, there,
I wanted to take
Lynn,
some.
do you have any thought? Lynn, I think this might have come from you. Do you have any thoughts on this
No.
one?
This came from
It
me.
did come
Oh, it came from you,
it
George?
came from me and George. It's something
Okay.
that I have suggested to Paul that he has too many direct reports.
Yes.
I've said this to him year after year after year.
Mhm.
And that was the whole purpose.
Lynn,
And
do you agree
that's-
that it have to be done externally? That there's.
Oh,
it's
it would,
pointless to
you'd
ask
need
him to
a
do it?
consultant for it. Yes.
Yes, yes.
I mean, a consultant makes sense, but I don't think this year, spending money on that is what we need, but so we can leave it in and bring it up at the retreat.
So it would have to read, hire a consultant to, you have to insert,
Review
hire a
the
consultant
organiza-
to review the organizational structure and distribution of responsibilities of the town manager and the assistant town manager. That's what it should be.
It's
Oh, I
more than
stopped. I
that.
gotta put
It's
wood on the fire.
including your finance director and all your other direct reports. It's
Okay.
whether or not, for instance, would you ever put all of public safety under one person? That
Right,
kind of,
instead of having them report up to Paul. So I think that this is really important. I do think we should do it. I think I agree that this might not be the year to prioritize this.
So do we decide that and that's?
Oh,
the
we decide
perennial
that. We can
problem?
take it out
We
and someone else
decide
can put
AOL
it back
decides
in.
that?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do we need to go to a vote? Let's
Uh,
straw poll it
was
here.
this it was in our other ones.
Yes, it's been in.
Mhm. It's been in
And
them.
nobody and Kathy didn't comment, nobody else has commented, like to take it out or whatever.
I do think I got one comment from a counselor that said, this is what I just said, right? Of how do you expect this to be completed? Because it could be completed in a myriad of ways. So I do think the clarification of engage a consultant to review this would be an important clarification if that's our expectation. And I think we should be upfront about that.
Mhm. Again, a retreat topic.
Yep.
Okay.
Fair enough.
All
And
right.
if we decide we don't have the time and money, then that's what we decide.
Okay. Second to last one.
No, you can't. Yeah, I'm sorry. This one's got all kinds of fun in it too.
So much stuff.
Sorry.
I'm not trying to skip it.
I know.
All right. Let's talk about infrastructure management. And I am gonna push us because I need us to talk about this retreat. So this one feels cut and dry to me.
Fine.
This one we've talked about at
Yeah,
length before. So
that's
are we
fine.
good on this one now?
Take
Okay.
the next one out. That's what I would suggest. And I'm the one who put it in here, so take it out.
Why?
Okay.
It's really a JCPC issue. Unless we,
Okay, I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
No,
I
you're fine.
disagree. It's not a JCPC issue.
well, that's where the money is. In other words, this year they took 500,000 out. That was JCPC. And now we're going to try and put it back in. I guess maybe then I should say continue to fund. In addition to chapter 90? I can never remember. 90.
90.
In addition to chapter 90 money, continue to put town money into road and sidewalk repairs.
But that's more of a financial guideline, I would argue,
right.
George.
Financial guideline or JCPC. What is this saying to Paul?
I don't know. Lynn?
This is leftover in some ways from a discussion last year
All right.
where we talked about him developing a 5-year plan to
Mhm.
address our road and sidewalk repairs.
Next item. Yes, right.
I do think that's the next item.
Yes, it
It
is.
is.
There's something like it.
Well, let's take out the other one.
That's what George was
Okay.
pitching.
Fine.
And in that plan would be, I assume, a way how we're gonna fund it.
Yep.
All right,
Okay,
we got something
I'm
out.
fine. Good.
I feel better already.
All right. Schematic designs.
Yeah, I guess.
The schematic design, Kathy feels that, is this present one for DPW?
Yes,
She
it's
said
DPW.
that just goes up with the committee up at the top.
No,
Because he can
sorry,
appoint a committee.
sorry.
And at
That's
the end of
totally
the year,
different.
we have made no progress on DPW. And if that's the case, I will be very, very unhappy.
I mean, leave it where it is. She can argue for consolidation at the
Yeah.
retreat. Propose an entry fee for outside municipalities. Her comment was, do we need to make it clear that this is in addition to the cost of extending services? Yes, we might. For outside when connecting. I think it's clear enough. I don't think we've done enough.
And we talked about this, and I apologize to everyone, but somehow it was clarified and then I forgot. Because what I've been told when I spoke to Guilford was that we already do this, but well,
It's an additional,
But
I think this would be my understanding, Lynn, you're the expert on this one, but this would be a
that's
different
we
fee
clarified last time,
from,
that's not quite
It's
true.
different than the cost. It's
It's an
different.
additional fee in addition to what we.
Right. So, for example, okay, Leverett decides to go ahead with the development of the Kittredge estate.
All right, and hopefully.
And to do that, they want to connect
clarify
into our
that.
water and sewer.
Right.
So first of
You did
all,
that.
they have to come up with the money to lay the pipe, et cetera, et cetera. Second of all, they now have to
Right.
pay their monthly fee. But this is above all of that. This is, you're coming in to a plant that we built a long time ago and have made major investment in, and you need to buy in as a partner.
Does
That's
that
what
give
this-
them a
I'm-
say in anything?
When I discussed this with Paul, he absolutely agreed.
Okay. all right.
it doesn't give them a say, not partner in
Yeah,
that sense, but,
okay.
sorry, just to be consistent, we don't have periods on the other. I'll deal with that. Okay. We're missing a couple new or not news, so let's talk here. Propose a plan to develop options for disposition. Disposition.
Disposition.
Disposition.
That's
Thank
a
you.
goal. Isn't that a carryover?
I think that's a carryover.
And haven't we signed a
Yeah, and
contract?
Carrie,
And
and
what does
all
it
that
mean?
Kathy wanted to suggest was that there should be an ad hoc committee for this. And she
Sorry,
specifically,
Are you still on the town-owned properties?
yeah,
Okay, sorry.
and she specifically suggested in another email that it should address the Wildwood property. I think all of that's covered in here.
Yeah, I do too.
So an ad hoc committee? I mean.
No,
'cause-
no, how Paul wants to do this,
Yeah,
I think we're getting a little too dictatorial.
fine, okay.
All
But
right,
he
so
hasn't been able
Kathy
to
may
do it
bring that
yet.
up, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Instead of propose a plan, Kathy is saying, propose a plan to form a committee to develop options. Like that's and we are saying, we just want him to pitch a plan.
Right.
It might be a
Okay.
committee, it might not.
And on the next one, on the elementary school,
We
she
can
said the
take it.
contract is signed. It includes caps on overtime and winter conditions to make for the lost time this fall. This will need to be monitored.
So we're done
That's-
with this one.
Yeah,
Just take
He's
it out.
already achieved one of his goals.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Great.
If it comes out.
get it out of there.
It's
None of
done,
them
it's
come
done. Okay,
Fine.
this one will be a fun discussion.
No, it should stay in. It should stay in.
I'm not pitching taking it out, I'm just saying.
Thank you.
She revised this to say, oh my God.
No, you're not, don't revise it. It's gonna cause a fight no matter what we say. Come on.
Exactly.
This
Please leave
is-
it
yeah.
the way it is.
Right.
Okay.
And this.
This one, update the 5-year capital improvement plan
Yep.
in light of the 2024 revisions. This has gotten flip-flopping feedback in terms of this is gonna be done automatically and doesn't need to be in here, and this should be a goal. So I've heard both pieces of feedback, so I have left it.
I think it's fine.
It's fine.
Okay, and this is, sorry, let's do this is new, and this is,
Ongoing,
Ongoing?
Yeah,
it's
because,
carryover.
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
Last one.
Uh,
Pursue strategic partnership, agreements with Amherst College and Hampshire College. Okay.
Pursue
New.
strategic agreements with each institution of higher ed.
Yeah, we changed it because we have the one with UMass. For another,
Yeah,
what?
go ahead.
year?
That addresses her concern.
Great.
And continue to encourage and support expanding resident involvement in town government and awareness. Do we keep that in?
We got
Huh?
rid of that
Yeah,
because
Where
it
is
meant
that?
nothing.
She said, yeah, okay, leave that out. That's fine.
So what
It's
are
not
we
a bad
asking-
idea. It just means nothing the way it's written.
Exactly.
what are we
Next was
asking you to
work.
do? Yeah, yeah.
What? Sorry, go ahead, George. What?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nope, I was moving on, so you go.
Yeah, I want you to move on.
All right. Work with our legislators to explore the possibility of state level, I think that should have a hyphen, state level payments in lieu of taxes or pilot legislation regarding nonprofits.
What are we asking him to do?
All he can do is advocate and talk with them regularly about this because he
We
can't
do
force
it all the
issue.
time.
So we're
So-
just saying this is a priority of things that you should regularly be talking with them about.
Right.
All right.
And let me just say that the last
Oh,
time,
sorry. Yeah.
we don't necessarily have agreement with our local legislators on some of this.
Right.
It also means giving them all the data they need. It might mean
does.
dedicating staff time to getting them what they need in order to advocate for this. So it is a matter of the council needs to say this is a priority because Paul will need to assign staff time to
Okay.
this project. Both of
Very
these
well stated,
projects.
Anna. Thank you.
No problem. So that kind of these are
Those aren't
two. They
new
look.
though, aren't they?
They are new. We haven't specifically. It's
Okay,
not that they haven't been
gotcha,
happening, but we haven't
gotcha.
put them in the goals before.
Thank you, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oh, I
and
hate
then
this last one. Take it out.
Yeah.
What is this crap?
oh, this is me
opportunity
having gone
there.
back and forth
Out.
20
Any
times.
counselor can make an appointment with Paul.
So this came from counselors who expressed concern that. How do I
Take it
phrase
out.
Okay. Let me at least get this out. Concerned that that they weren't hearing back or because they felt like the opportunity was not there when they reached out. So we got specific with this, saying like everybody should get at least 2 meetings a year if they want them. Pat, I agree with you. Paul's been very open to this. Again, if we take Paul out of the equation and just put generic town manager in, do we want to guarantee the right to meet?
The generic a new town manager could say, oh, well, I met with Pat twice. I don't have to meet with her again this year because that's what that says. It's
Mhm.
like our district meetings. Lynn and I have 2, maybe 3. Some
Mhm.
counselors have 5. Some counselor, this is ridiculous. I'm sorry. Does Paul get back to every one of us instantaneously? Not always, particularly right now with what's going on in his life.
Right.
But that's not an excuse because he also has a job. But to put that in, I just find that offensive. I really find it offensive. It's up to the counselor if they haven't gotten a response to go back to Paul and say, hey, I need a meeting and here's what it's about.
This is I will take it out if that's what GOL wants. I'm not going to argue for or against this particular
I'm
one.
sorry, I'm
This
getting-
was you're fine. It's not me. You're fine. This was an adaptation, I believe, of a prior goal that said make yourself available to counselors. I think we just tried to be a little bit more clear in it.
He
But
makes
if the
himself
committee-
available. It shouldn't even be a goal.
okay, George,
Out.
Lynn, go. All right, done. Look, we took 3 out, everybody. Okay, so
You want to know how many I had on my list to take out tonight?
no.
It was a lot more than
Anna,
3. I can tell you that.
take out Anna.
No, Anna's doing a great job. It's not her fault.
Rude.
Not
Just
at
because you
all.
want something doesn't mean everybody else wants it. Okay, I'm gonna edit this number. I will do the counting after you all leave. Just gonna highlight it so I don't forget.
And you're gonna add something about grants and all that, is
It's just
is that
sentences
I
that
already?
did
relate to
already.
us,
It's
they
I'm
in,
sorry.
recommend-
right
Yes, you
here.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take an official vote on this one again. Just, I know we've edited it, so we gotta vote on it. Is there a motion to, what do we have, referring this or
Recommending.
recommending? Recommend, okay, thank you. So is there a motion? I'll move it. I move to recommend the 2025 draft town manager goals as amended by GOL on January 9th, 2025 to the council for review. Is there a
Second.
second? All right, Pat
You can
seconds.
put Lynn there. It's
I'll
okay.
put Lynn, okay.
You
Um,
recommend them for adoption, right?
I do, I guess. Yeah, I
That
do
sounds
recommend them for
good.
adoption. I just don't know if they're gonna get there, Athena. Okay. I do recommend them for adoption. Thank you. Pat, or Lynn, is that an, yeah, okay. Making sure that's what you wanted to. All right. How do we vote? Pat,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Mr. Ryan. All right. And I am an I as well. We are 4 in favor, 1 absent. Okay. So we are going to spend quickest amount of time. Let's talk about this retreat. If we picture it in your brains, everybody, set the scene, close your eyes, do what you have to do to get in that really positive headspace that you're going to feel when we go into this council retreat together. It's a Saturday morning. We're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and we're talking about the town manager goals.
Saturday, not before 10, please.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know when it's going to be.
I know.
That was my hypothetical visioning. All right.
Yeah.
What I want us to think about is, how do we think, the 4 of us, and Athena, please, Athena, feel free to insert all thoughts and opinions here, within moderation. Maybe not all your truest thoughts. Anyway, but what do we think is going to be the most effective way to approach these goals? Meaning, do we want to literally go through action items point by point, voting up, down? 7 means it stays in, 7 or up means it stays in or not. Do we want to straw poll it? I'll pause there before I insert my own opinion. Is there a different way we want to approach it? Let's take a minute to think on
Athena
that.
has-
I see that. Thank you, Pat. But I'm going to give everybody just 10 seconds to just gather your thoughts here, and then I will start calling on folks. Okay. Athena, did you have some thoughts?
Lynn had done a ranking method before. And that might be a way of identifying where priorities lie. And it might be a way of identifying goals that maybe aren't priorities that could be eliminated.
So one way to do a ranking like that, that I've done with groups in the past that's been really interesting, is you give everyone a set, okay, if we're in the room, this is how it kind of works and we'd adapt it. But basically you give everybody a set amount of votes. Say there's 35 or so goals, we give everybody 20 stickers, 20 dots, and you can allocate your priority to the goals that you want. You can do one goal gets all 30 of your stickers, or you distribute them amongst a bunch, or you can weight your priorities versus doing a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? That could be one way of prioritizing this. We could do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 kind of system within each area, or across all goals. We can kind of do a full-on ranked choice voting situation amongst all the action items. How do people feel about the idea of trying to prioritize in some way? And do you have a preference for how that might go? Let's start with a thermometer here. Total thumbs up is yes, I think we should do prioritization and ranking. Thumbs down is this is a terrible idea, don't do it. Not this is a terrible idea, but I don't think this would work with our group. Somewhere in the middle. Show me where we're at. Okay, Lynn is following directions. Pat, George is in
I'm
the
kind
middle.
of like that too.
Kind of like that. Okay. Can the folks who are in the middle tell me about what what's putting you in the middle? What would shift or one way or another? Yes, George.
First of all, take climate goals. Or
Okay.
climate action items. There's only 3 of them.
Mhm.
So. And
So what if we looked at it across all of the
Yeah.
action items at once, not within an area?
all of them at once?
Why not? Because like you said, they're not distributed evenly amongst the categories. So it's not
Some of
necessarily
these
fair.
I wouldn't give a 1 to.
Okay.
I would give a 0. If they're negative numbers, I'd give a negative number. And so I don't, and
So
let's say when the dust settles and we have our tabulation, whether it's dots or numbers or whatever, what does that mean? Do we then say, okay, anybody below this number of dots or numbers is just out,
or do we vote on those items?
or we vote on those items? And anything
could.
above that is in and we don't vote on them. Some of us might like actually to take a public stand on something that we know is not going to pass because we want our constituents and the world at large to know this is what we believe. And some of these things maybe we don't want to take a vote on, but that's life. So I guess I'm struggling to see how we can avoid just doing it item by item by item. And if we do it
Thank
with
you.
rankings, and we have to then we vote on some because they're below a certain, line, and we don't vote on others. Those are in automatically, and we don't have to talk about them. We don't have to discuss them. We don't get to ask questions like, how are we going to pay for this? Or, who's going to actually carry this out? And why are we asking the town manager to do this? We're not going to get to ask those questions because we've already determined that in their infinite wisdom, our colleagues have decided that those are definitely going to be in. And maybe in the course of discussing questions like how much it's going to cost and why we're asking Paul to do this and who's going to do it, some people might change their minds and go, that's maybe not such a great idea, or the opposite. They might say, well, now I think this is worth doing. I mean, we've had that happen here. I mean, I hear some arguments and I go, oh, okay, all right, maybe there's some merit here. If I'm left to my own devices, I'll just vote my prejudices. If I don't hear what Pat thinks, what Lynn thinks, what Alicia thinks, etc., about whatever, I just vote my biases. It just takes a lot of time and it's painful, but I don't see how, that's my problem.
Athena had
Okay.
her hand up for a moment.
Yeah, Pat, I got the hands. Thank you, though.
Oh, I don't know if you saw it or
Well, if
not.
people put their hand down, it means they chose to put their hand down, and they will put it back up if they
Bye-bye.
want to say something. But Pat, I did say I was going to call on you after to
I
talk about your
haven't
middle.
raised
Did
my
you have
hand.
any
I'm not
thoughts?
ready to say anything. I'm really not.
Totally fair. Lynn.
So one option is to have a timed discussion for each of the goals to begin with,
Read my notes.
and have it be clarifying questions, suggestions for modification, and something else. Like, there's every goal gets looked at this way, including maybe feasibility. And then after we're done with that, do the rankings.
That was what I had just written down too. I think that doing sort of a X number of minutes per item, we read it out. I think your point about clarifying questions versus kind of debate, kind of try to structure this, right? So start off with clarification and questions, then go back and do discussion and debate. Is that what you're saying? And then do ranking, or do ranking and then, or just kind of do
I think
questions and debate. I don't think we're going to be able to
have a
keep people just to
conversation.
questions.
And during that conversation, you clarify and you talk about modifications and you talk about feasibility. Okay? Then you do a ranking, and then you come back and have another conversation and decide, are we done with this? Is this where we agree? Something like that.
Okay, so round one is questions and discussion. Round two is ranking. Round three is discussion and vote on each item.
Yeah,
And I think
and now Athena
what-
does have her hand up.
I do see.
I know.
I think okay, got it. Athena.
I think it might be worth incorporating into that initial conversation the fact that this is this council's last year,
Mm-hmm.
and include in the conversation, what the council really wants to see achieved by the end of the year, to highlight try and get counselors thinking about the importance of what they really want to fight for to be on this list.
Mm-hmm.
I think we tend to treat everything as though it's a high priority, and I don't think you can achieve your best work when you're trying to do so many things well. We can do a few things really well. We can do many things okay. So trying to frame things in that way, because if we
Yeah.
end up with 30 some odd goals, then the likelihood of those goals being the best outcome, I think, is lower.
Mhm. George?
I hear that. I like it. I guess I'm trying to think what questions we can ask in the discussion phase that might lead us to the question of prioritizing and the idea of, is this doable? Is this doable in a year, given that this is our last year? And given all the other things we have to do, how important is this to you? Those I think are actually, in spite of my complaints about prioritizing and all that stuff, those are two very, very important points. So as we do I mean, maybe that happens during the prioritizing section. We say, as we do this, keep in mind that this is our last year. Is this something that's doable in a year? And secondly, is this something that's really, really important to you?
Okay.
Because I was initially thinking, let's just skip from the discussion immediately to voting and not do any prioritizing. Right now, it's a three-step process, and what Athena says and what some of you are saying suggests that we can't avoid some kind of, because as she said, I mean, we end up with 35 action items, which is where we're headed. I think we're headed to that, and I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the day, we have something like that in this document. And I think that would be unfortunate, but that does raise the very basic question of how do you then prioritize? How do you get us, all 13 of us, to really focus our mental energies on, yes, you like this very much and you really want to see it happen, but is this the highest priority for this coming year?
If we can, sorry, George, are you done?
I'm done.
I think this is where the challenge of all of these goals are slightly different in size, right? So some of them are going to take a full year to accomplish, some of them are smaller, some of them are, they're all different sizes. And so it's really hard to equate them and say, well, we need to knock 5 of them off the list or 2 of them off, or however many, because knocking one that's a quick, easy goal off the list kind of does nothing. So I think that the prioritization discussion has to happen within context of like figuring out, and the feasibility conversation needs to happen within context of, we're not trying to get to a set number. We're trying to get to a number that is doable and doable well within the year. Something that I'd like the committee to discuss is how we're going to handle modifications to the goals, because what happens quite often is when we bring something to council, there's requests, not always in motion form, which my pitch is going to be painful, but I'm going to pitch it anyway, to change the wording or things like that. And my concern is that we as a council will go towards language that is appeasing to the broad group, but makes these goals non-specific, non-actionable, or otherwise kind of meaningless. We've worked really hard and had really productive tension as a group to get these two actionable places. And I don't want to lose that when we go to the council. That's not to say these can't change. I'm not opposed to these changing, but what I'm suggesting is that if someone wants to modify a goal, they have to present their proposed language in the form of a motion and we have to vote on it. I think that if we allow this to be a consensus, everybody pitches it and we watch the changes happen in real time, track changes all up on the board, we're going to lose the integrity of these goals in the sense of we're going to lose the specificity, or we're going to put something in there that, yeah, anyway, that is a concern that I have, is how we as a group are going to handle proposals to change the language. And I think my suggestion would be that we recommend that changes be presented in the form of a motion. Athena?
I'm not sure that I agree with you on that point because you have 13 counselors who are all love to edit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think forcing motions can make things slow and clunky. I think it might be wise to take time to consider what changes have been made and take a pause before a vote is taken on a section or on a goal or whatever, so that you have that time to reflect and make sure that people feel that the goal is doing what you want it to do. But the reason I initially raised my hand was because you had said after I made my comment that, you know, we shouldn't take out goals just to reduce the number if there's an easy one. And I wasn't suggesting that you reduce the number just for the sake of reducing the number, but there could be rounds of prioritization and ranking. You could have an initial round of everyone pick your most important thing and then see how much overlap there is, and then do another round of that and see how much overlap there is until, you know, there's multiple ways of taking this on so that the council can figure out if there is a lot of if there are a lot of goals in common that everyone feels very strongly about, and then maybe there are some other, you know, low-hanging fruit that you can add to that list and then have a longer conversation about the middle stuff. There's a few different ways of doing it that kind of combines some of these ideas, and I think that might be useful.
Could you repeat the method you were talking about? I'm not sure I totally captured it, and I want to make sure I got it. You said kind of could you say it again?
You can do rounds of
Okay.
prioritizing. So you could ask counselors to say, if you are able to say that we've accomplished this one thing, what would your one thing be? Or these three things, what would your three things be? That are significant accomplishments that you want to say that we've achieved by the end of the year. And then go back and go, okay, here's what we have left, or here's what, you know, less than a quorum had in common. And then see what more the group thinks that should be added and so on. And my other strong suggestion is that we, and I think it'll depend who is president at that point and is chairing the meeting, but my suggestion is always to take a pause before you take a vote on some of these things, because the votes can happen quickly, but the suggestion to do motions and votes on each goal and each change for a goal, I think will slow things down.
Enormously.
Just my opinion, my 2 cents.
Thank you. George?
First, want to say something about being consistent in our use of language going forward. My understanding, and it may be wrong, is that we're actually not going to be talking about the goals. What we're going to be voting on and discussing are the action items. My understanding, though I may be mistaken, is that we've already gone through the major goal, so-called goal categories, goals. And so what we're talking about, if I'm right, are action items, of which there are 30 or whatever it is. And we're trying to decide how many of these should go into this goals document. So am I correct in my use of language that we are going to be talking at the retreat about action items and trying to prioritize them and decide what should go in and what shouldn't. We're not going to be
Yeah.
discussing the goal areas. We're not going to be discussing the objectives. We're going to be talking about the action items.
So yes, and since day one, I have regretted calling them goal areas because it's caused a lot of confusion. I should have just said area. Yes, we are primarily discussing the action items. However, any counselor has the right to propose a change to the other parts of this document. It is the council's document. So while we have sought feedback many, many times on the goal area and the objectives, the action items are what we're primarily discussing. And I think colloquially, those are referred to as goals in many ways. And we could change the headers right now to lessen that confusion and just say area, objective, and action item. If that might help clarify it.
The way this gets framed at the
Mhm.
retreat cannot completely control, as you point out, what may be brought up. But if
Right.
it's framed in such a way that the assumption is we're going to work our way through the action items, and then someone says, oh, no, I want to talk about the goal areas or the objectives, well, then I guess that's what we're going to have to do. But if we just sort of say we're going to talk about goals, well, is that the goal areas, the objectives, or the action? I think it could be framed, if I'm right in my thinking here, that it can be framed to focus on the action items.
Mhm.
Hopefully that's where we will focus our energies, and we will not get into a long discussion about whether we want to re-describe some of the goal areas or re-describe some of the objective language. We've already gone through that. We had a discussion.
Mhm.
You're right. You can't prevent that from happening. If it happens, we'll have to deal with it. But I hope that we could frame it in such a way that it would discourage that kind of discussion, or at least put the focus on action items and then see where we go.
George, if you're able to successfully discourage discussion on anything.
No, I know, but I mean, and it's just how it's framed. I mean, anyway, yeah, I know.
I'm just kidding.
The other thing I'd like to be clear on are what are I think Anna's been good about this, specific questions we're asking about the action items. And I'd like it if we had like an agreement on the 3 or 4 or 5 questions that we can come up. So one is, I mean, these are just suggestions. One is it clear? Is it actionable? Is it measurable? Is it doable in a year? And is it a high priority? Now, maybe we could collapse, but if we could have like 3 or 4 or 5 at the most kind of questions we, at least as a committee, can agree on that we're going to be asking during the discussion and say, well, that's a great point, but it's clearly it's not actionable, or it's not clear. It needs to be clear, whatever. Is it measurable? Is that a good approach, or do we just kind of leave it?
I think that the
And-
question, sorry, I'm sorry, George.
Go.
Right now, what I wrote down is the questions the council and this committee should be able to answer are, is it doable in a year? What does success or completion look like? And is that clear? And and I just wrote prioritization, but like, is it a priority for the majority of the council? Those were the 3 that I got
Good.
that encapsulated that thought.
Good.
That's what this
Anything?
committee is bringing forward, is action items that achieve those 3 things for each.
But yes, and
Yep.
I think that that's going to need to be a regular reminder as we go through this discussion, especially if folks are pitching to add or change things, of the end result should be doable in a year, clarity on what completion or success looks like, and a priority for the council. We're at 8:29, so I've got a lot of notes and I want to summarize them at the end before I bring this forward. And I know a couple of us still have comments here. So Lynn, and then I'll go, and then George.
So one of the preliminary things to do before the retreat would be to give counselors the sheet and have those questions there for each one so that they think about it in advance. The other thing would be, and don't even ask them to rank at that point.
Mm-mm.
So that's one thought. I do like the idea of 3 questions, if we can get it down to 3, okay? The other thing that I just want to mention, and I don't know if this is a rule, but we don't ever actually take votes at retreats. Now, I think that's not a rule. But we should clarify that, okay?
I'm checking.
Because if we honestly believe that by the end of this retreat, the council will be ready to take a vote, that would be lovely. Absolutely phenomenal. But it may be that there's one more round and then it comes back to the council at a regular meeting.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so
Can I interject with an answer to Lynn's question?
oh yeah, absolutely.
It's work sessions where no formal votes are taken.
So we could post this as a meeting,
Special meeting.
a special meeting, meaning no public comment. And we could have a work session in the meeting. And
No,
then,
don't say work session.
yeah, okay.
Work-
Thank you.
Work
Great.
sessions are where we don't take votes at work sessions, so it's a special meeting, it's a retreat.
Right. I think that's a great solution. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm sorry I
you,
put those
Christina.
words out there because we're never going to use them in terms of this retreat now.
So I know when I pitched the idea of voting on all the changes, the reason is I think that sometimes what I've seen happen is, okay, the document that we have has been honed and crafted and a lot of hands and a lot of eyes on it. Sometimes what happens when we get to the council level is someone tosses something out there, and because people don't want to spend a ton of time on discussing it, even if they disagree with it, they will just let it slide. And my concern, and just kind of let it go because it's not the biggest deal in the world. And maybe that's fine. And if that's what folks want to do, again, democracy, I'm with you. It's fine. But my concern is that sometimes it is either the loudest voices or someone has a feeling about something that they just want to put out there. And regardless of whether or not the group agrees with them, we don't know because it's kind of automatically put in the document as we're working through. And then we go on to other things and we don't necessarily kind of center on the implications of what was just pitched. So my concern is that I think this has immense potential to get really unwieldy if we sort of just take edits as we go and not if we maybe it's not on every suggestion, maybe it's on each item to kind of accept a change to each action item. But my worry is that sometimes things get really messy when we do that editing in that way and not maybe it's a straw poll. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to get at that solution in a less time consuming way or maybe a less formal way, but without sort of that automatic wordsmithing and potential changing of meaning that can happen when we sort of just say, I'd rather this say this, and then someone else says, I'd rather it doesn't say this. So then where do we go from there? We kind of tend to then go in circles where people just say their point and no one actually just calls the question. And maybe the answer is Anna, then you should call the question. And
So Anna, I think
what?
there's an issue here of maybe needing a facilitator. And I mean a serious task-oriented facilitator. And it's the kind of thing you do when you do workshops. It's the kind of thing I do when I do workshops, but we're members of the body.
Mhm.
So
Either way, though, you need someone who's going to require the group to make that decision.
you got it.
Regardless of what that process is, I think what I would my point is I'd like to avoid the kind of more consensus based or just a bit more kind of passive isn't the right word, but like the approach where if someone says it, it goes up on the board and we don't really
Right.
debate it.
I'm
So a
Mhm.
facilitator could do that, absolutely, and we probably should have a facilitator for this, but I wanted to maybe
Mhm.
explain what my fear is about this process.
Your
We're
fear is
oh, sorry.
founded.
Um, I do want to push us along, so I'm going to offer kind of a last call for comments on this, and then I want to summarize the points that I have heard here to share that I'm sharing with Lynn and Athena, who will be moving this forward in some way. George?
I like the idea of the 3 questions that you put out there. Is it doable in a year? What does success look like? And is it a priority? I earlier got onto my soapbox and started ranting and raving about the fact that we don't consider financial impacts and we don't consider impacts on staff. But I remember times when I've raised this in other contexts where Paul is present and he will look at me and say, your job is to figure out what your priorities are. It's my job to figure out how to, right? And so he doesn't really appreciate that concern. I mean, he understands it, but it's basically saying that's my problem. So it seems like those 2 questions, in spite of my long tirade, probably just don't come up during this discussion.
Do you think that that's something, though, we could,
Which,
when we share this document out and we share it with Paul, we say, if you could mull over the questions of, is this a low, medium, or high ask? Roughly, we're not asking for exacts in any way, shape, or form, but could you think about low, medium, high ask on time and dollars?
and that was my second point, and then I'll shut up. Exactly that. What is
Okay.
what is Paul's role in this, and when does he get to have his say? And I think it's important that he have his say. And it sounds like the retreat is where he would have his say. And so in fashioning the retreat, I would think whoever is in charge is also conscious of making sure that I'm sure Paul's perfectly capable of doing this himself, but making sure that the town manager's getting ample time to tell us what he thinks.
Mhm. Okay. So I want to summarize what I'm hearing and then and make sure I've captured it, and please tell me what I missed here. Did I do this in any logical way? No. So first note is retreat underlined. So what we talked about here is doing kind of a 3-round-ish focus. So we start off with questions and discussion on the action items. That would focus on the 3 questions. Well, clarifying questions is point 1. And then the questions to erase what I just wrote, start over. Pre-retreat, we send people the document that we just voted to recommend to the council for adoption. And we say, please consider as you're reviewing this, is it doable in a year? Roughly think about your prioritization. Which ones do you care most about? Not necessarily saying pick your top whatever, but thinking which ones are the priority for you. And are you clear on what success or completion of this goal looks like? And those 3 questions continue to kind of be the litmus test for action items as we go through. Doable in a year, clarity on what success looks like, and got to be a priority. Then when we get to the actual retreat, we start off with clarifying questions and discussion. Maybe we go through either point by point or area by area, whatever. Then we get into a prioritization discussion where we didn't necessarily land on a style of prioritization, but we could do a 3 rounds, like pick your top 5, then go and discuss the highs and lows or middle, and then do another round. We could do the kind of everybody gets 10 priorities, throw them where you want, and then discuss the ones that were not in the priority, but we do some sort of prioritization discussion. After that, we might do some sort of culling discussion. But we go back round 3, part 3 of the retreat is discussion and vote. Does that sound? Did I miss anything? And Paul's thoughts go into the question and discussion part of this. He's obviously talking about it throughout the whole thing, but we would like him to speak to these during that question and discussion part. And then we talked about important things we frame the discussion to be on the action items. We always pause and take a minute to breathe, maybe, to breathe and check in before we vote on anything, not just rushing into votes, and talk about especially how this is this council's last year, really thinking about what is it that we want to accomplish by the end of this council term, which is in less than a year from today. But who's counting? Does that sound true to what the discussion we just had was? Did I miss anything?
I think so.
George?
So you talked about question and discussion. Was that the
Yeah.
third round?
That was
it
the
was-
first round.
That was the first, so that said clarifying discussion. So, question means basically questions of clarification. So that first round, it sounds like action item by action item. We would ask for, do people have questions about clarity? And, basically the questions that are the three questions. That's what would happen in that section?
George, I think realistically, in an ideal world, that is what would happen in that round. But I think that we are not going to be able to keep people to clarifying questions, and that people are going to propose changes during that first round. I also
Exactly.
think that if we are then going to go into prioritization, that would be the round to do that kind of editing thing. Because how are people supposed to prioritize if the goal is just going to change? Or do we
Mhm.
then do, if we're doing no edits in that first round? I don't know. I think we kind of have to do the edits. If people are going to propose edits, I think it has to be in the first round so that we're prioritizing
Right.
what people want to see on there.
So editing takes place there, wordsmithing takes place there. Item by
That's the
item,
thing.
what about eliminating? Just, decisions to
I-
take something out. That happens in round 2.
I think that happens in round 2. Or round 3, really. Like round 2 is just the prioritization. Round 3 is let's look at the bottom. It depends on how the
Well, that's what we're
facilitator
trying to
decides
figure
to.
out. I know it's hard,
Well,
but
but I'm not going to be facilitating it. So I do think that there's going to be some, if we're doing an external facilitator, it's going to depend on that. So it could be, so for example, the method Athena was talking about of like pick your top X number, and then the council discusses the lowest ones. That would be the calling opportunity. Similar with the dot method that I mentioned, the ones that got no priority dots would be discussed and possibly voted to remove at that point.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
Between steps 2 and 3,
yeah.
step 2B would be the culling part. But I think realistically, if we're going to remove something, that feels to me like, I'm gonna say the word vote again, but it feels like if we're removing something on this, that should be, I don't know.
No.
It's 8:43.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do is send this to Lynn and Athena, even though they're both here, and just try to congeal my notes into one email. I will also send this to them to, can I send this to the council if I BCC everybody and tell us, and don't ask for opinion, just say like for your reference, GOL voted to send this to council tonight?
You're doing a GOL report, right?
Of
Just put it
course
in the
I
report, yeah.
am.
So it should be in the report.
That was a very kind way to remind me that I have to do a GOL report.
It's a huge attachment to a short report.
Yeah,
The report is, this is what we did. Okay, yep, I will, yes, I will
And we
attach it to
voted
the GOL report.
unanimously to
Thank you.
forward it to them.
so
Yeah.
it'll be,
Perfect.
it'll be with your report and it'll be under that action item in the packet on Monday.
Perfect, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Is there anything else folks would like to make sure that we talk about or that I have in my notes here before we make a motion to adjourn?
George has his hand up.
Oh, he does. I'm sorry, George.
He's taking his hand down. Anna, I want to
I have a
thank
quick
you.
question. There's no date set yet for the retreat. Yeah, okay, no,
I want to thank
Um,
Anna for pushing us through this again
Yes,
tonight.
yes.
Thank you.
yeah, nice job, really.
And for,
I
and for
appreciate all of
bringing the
you.
retreat up for us to discuss. I think that was important.
Yeah.
Hopefully it makes the job of actually planning it a little easier. A little, I said a little. All right. I want to thank this. I know we're missing Counselor Ate, and I know we're over time, but I do want to thank this particular iteration of GOL because we don't know what committees will look like next. So I do want to thank you all. I've really appreciated getting to work with you in this capacity. And I haven't served on a committee with most of you ever before. So this has been truly, even when I almost cried that one time, it was still a joy. So thank you
I don't
all.
remember that. I don't remember
I
that.
hit it pretty well, but it was a dark day.
I apologize.
I've cried a number of times on
It's
this.
always my fault.
Just the one time. All
I'm
right.
about to
thank-
cry again as soon as we
I
hang.
know. How about George, instead of crying, would you like to, but
I
anyway,
make a
thank you
motion.
all truly. Would you like to make a motion
Thank-
to adjourn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You've done a great job. Yes, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Second. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call the vote and I'm going to write it down. So I put it in my dang stupid report. All right. Pat,
Before I vote, thank you for your work.
thank
Yes,
you.
it's time to adjourn.
All right. Lynn,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
I am an I as well. It is
Athena?
unanimous with
Bye.
Bye. All right. Thank
Bye,
you all
bye.
so much. See
Concur.
you
Thank
on
you.
Monday, everybody.
Thank you, Athena.
Bye.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.